Hey guys, and welcome to lesson 6 of our 3ds Max and V-Ray course. Now, in this lesson, we will be continuing with our modifiers, and we're going to learn about some new interesting ones, like for example, the Lattice Modifier, which transforms your segments into struts and your vertices into joints, enabling you to create models really quick. After that, we're going to learn about the Noise Modifier, which is used in multiple ways more than one. And you're going to notice how easy it is to use the noise modifier to achieve some really hard modeling features that without this modifier would be close to impossible. After that, we're going to visit the slice modifier that enables us to slice any objects into two. And finally, the shell modifier that will help us apply a thickness to any objects we have. And this is very useful in any 3D software. Now in the end, we're going to model our first object using only modifiers, and starting out with only a sphere. And you're going to notice how easy it is to model an object when you know which modifiers to use and how to approach it. Because in the end, modeling anything is really all about knowing the different tools of a software and knowing when to use them and how to use them. So let's jump right into it.
So let's go to the command panel and create our box and hit F4 to show the edge faces. I'm gonna need you to increase the height segments to 2. And head over to the Modifiers tab, to the drop-down menu, and search for the modifier called Lattice. Here it is. So just click it, and immediately you can see the effect it had on our box. So what exactly happened? So each segment on our box is a strut, and each point on our box is now a joint. So if I go back to the box in the command panel and click on it and increase the length segments, for example, I can see how increasing any segment would change my lattice modifier. And each segment is replaced by a strut. I can increase the width segment like that. I can even go back to the lattice modifier and play around with the parameters. Now, starting off with the geometry, we have by default checked the apply to entire objects. And now we can just play with the parameters of the geometry. So now we have both the struts and the joints. I can choose to show the joints only from the vertices, which are the points linking the segments together, or I can choose to show the struts only from edges, like that. Go ahead and press Alt-W to maximize the perspective viewport in order for us to better visualize the lattice modifier. Of course, let's keep the geometry to both and continue with the parameters a bit. Now, the struts, as we said, are the segments of our box. We can increase or decrease its radius. We can add segments to it. Notice how we are adding segments to our struts. And for now, it has 4 sides. Each segment has 4 sides. We can increase that to make it circular, like that. Now moving on to the Joints tab. For now, it's set on Octa, which is the model of our joints. We can set it to tetra if we want, or to icosa. We can even change the radius of the joints and increase the segments to create a full sphere. If I click F4 to remove the edged faces, we can see how the lattice modifier worked on our box. So, of course, I can go back to the box and increase or decrease my segments. So, the lattice modifier is especially used to construct structures, or for example, a glass facade of a building. I want you to go back to the Create tab and create a sphere into our 3D scene. And hit F4 to show the edges. And I want you to click on the box, go to the modifiers list, and right-click on the lattice modifier and click on copy. Then head back to the sphere, right-click on the sphere in the command panel and paste it. So you can notice how I just copied the lattice modifier and pasted on another object. Now you can copy and paste any modifier you'd like onto another object. You just have to be careful to play with the parameters accordingly. Like here, for example, because of the sphere sizes, the joints are not showing. So we need to click on the sphere and decrease the radius of the joints. Maybe input a 1 centimeter value. And now the joints are not showing, so maybe increase it to 2. Yeah. And now we have our sphere with the lattice modifier on it. Now, of course, I can choose to display the struts only to have this effect on the sphere. Now, one more thing when it comes to copying and pasting modifiers. I want you to head to the sphere and right-click and copy the lattice modifier on the sphere and go back to the box and remove the modifier from the stack and then right-click and paste instanced. So what does the paste instant do? It actually links the two modifiers together. So now whenever I change one modifier, the parameters of one modifier, the second modifier will follow through. Like for example, I want to increase the radius of my struts. And you can notice how when I changed one modifier in the box, the sphere modifier is also changing with it. So moving forward with the modifiers in this lesson, I want you to press D on your keyboard to go to the top viewport and then head over to the Create tab, click on Plane, and click and drag to create a plane. I then want to go to the parameters and increase my length segments to 100 and my width segments to 100 as well. Let's press P on the keyboard again to go to the perspective viewport and press Z on the keyboard to zoom in on our selected object, which is the plane. Press F4 to reveal the edged faces. And then I want you to go to the modifiers list, to the drop-down menu, and search for the noise modifier, which is located right here. So let's go ahead and click it. So heading over to the parameters of the noise modifier, we have our seed, which generates a random pattern from each number you set to it. we have the scale, which is the scale of our noise, and we have the strength of our noise on the X, Y, and Z axis. So by default, the controls are inactive until we change the settings. So let's decrease our scale value to 20, for example, and increase the strengths on the X-axis a bit, and on the Y-axis, and on the Z-axis. So of course you can notice how the noise modifier is working on our plane. Of course we can decrease the scale to increase the noise in our plane, like that, creating a ripple effect. It can be a water body or anything that, I don't know. So for example, I can decrease the strength on the Z-axis, on the Y-axis, and on the X-axis to create a watery-like plane. Now, of course, I can check the fractal noise, which produces like a fractal effect based on the current settings, and we now have the option to play with the roughness and with the iteration. So the roughness determines the extent of the fractal variation. So lower values are less rough. So if we increase the roughness, we can see how it's becoming more and more rough. And the iterations controls the number of iterations. So fewer iterations generates a smoother effect. So I'm gonna go ahead and decrease the values, and you can see how it's smoothening out. Of course, I can go back to the plane and increase my length and width segments to 200 each, and go back to my noise modifier and increase the scale, the strength on my Z-axis to form a terrain-like model. Now that is it for our noise modifier. Another modifier I want to cover in this lesson is the slice modifier. And in order to do that, let's create a new box in our scene. So just click and drag to create this box. And hit F4 to show the etched faces. Let's go ahead to the modifiers list, click the drop down menu, and press slice on my keyboard to reveal the slice modifier. So, as its name states, the slice modifier is used to slice in any object. So this is our slice plane highlighted in orange, and right now it's located on the bottom of my box. Therefore, it has no effect on the box. So I need to move the slice plane upwards. How can I do it? I just head over to the command panel to the slice modifier and click the small arrow right next to it to reveal the slice plane. Now click the slice plane, and while you have your move tool selected, you can then go to the viewport and move it upwards. Now you can see how the slice plane is slicing through the box, creating this segment. Of course, I can head over to the slice parameters and remove the top or the bottom of my box. Now, another important modifier is the shell modifier. If you notice, the interior of the box is shaded in black. And that's because the faces of the box are facing upwards. So if I go to the modifiers list and searched for the shell modifier and apply it, I can give my box a thickness. Of course, I can play a bit with the parameters of the shell modifier. So right now we have our outer amount set to 1 centimeters. So my box has a shell of 1 centimeters outwards. I can increase the inwards shell by just increasing the inner amount parameters. So I'm gonna set it to 1 as well. Of course, I can increase the outer or the inner as much as I'd like. So, to cover everything we have learned in this lesson, I want to create a vase. So I want you to hit Ctrl A on your keyboard to select all the objects in your scene and click Delete to delete them all. So in order to create my vase, I'm going to start out with creating a sphere. So I'm going to press Alt-W on my keyboard to go back to the original viewport layout. Click on the Create tab in the command panel, click on Sphere, and create my sphere. Now I'm going to head over to the parameters of the sphere and increase this to 180 seconds. And then I want to go to the front viewport and click on the Select and Uniform Scale. And then I want to scale my sphere on the y-axis. Now I'm gonna go to the modifiers list, click the drop-down menu, press slice on my keyboard to reveal the slice modifier and apply it. I then want to go to the command panel, click on the small arrow next to the slice modifier to reveal the slice plane, press on it, go back to the main toolbar and press on move, and I want to move my slice plane downwards till here, and then just click on remove bottom. Now if we go to the perspective viewport and maximize it, we can notice that the slice plane has sliced through our sphere and created an opening. How can I close this opening? It's very simple. We have a modifier called cap holes. We can just apply it to close any cap, any hole, like that. After that, I want to go to the front viewport and apply another slice plane on top of my modifiers. And I want to reveal the slice plane in order to be able to move it. And I want to move it upwards. And this time I want to remove the top. Now if I click Alt-W to maximize my perspective viewport, I can always press the G button to remove my grid. Like that. I want to click on the sphere and click on the modifiers list and press shell on my keyboard to reveal the shell modifier and apply it. Clicking F4, we can see that now we have a nice vase. Of course, I can play with the shell parameters a bit. Put the outer amount to 5 centimeters. And then finally, I want to go to the modifier list and apply a noise modifier. And I want to put the scale to 20 and play with the strength parameters on the X and on the Y axis to create a ripple effect on my vase. So maybe like that, and something like this, and there you have it. our vase is complete. Now, if you notice in the command panel, we have a lot of modifier stacks on top of each other. Whenever you are fully satisfied with your object and you don't need to go back to any modifier to modify it, you can just right-click and then click on the Collapse All button. Now it will tell you if you want to save and continue. If you press on hold, yes, you will save the scene and then you will apply the Collapse All, or you can just click on yes. Now I have erased all my modifiers and all I am left with is the mesh I have created. And I can go ahead and call this Vase.
So guys, this is it for this lesson, where we have continued our work on some of the most interesting modifiers that 3ds Max has available for us to use, and that can really make our job easier when we know about them. Now, as you have noticed, we have a lot of modifiers that we can use in all sorts of ways. So I advise you to experiment with them and get to know as much modifiers as you can, because this can really be helpful in the future. Now, in the next lesson, we will continue our lessons on modifier, and we're going to go further in depth with more sophisticated modifiers, and we're going to try to blend them together to achieve a final model. So see you in the next one.